some of you, and they are in your bulletin. Ephesians 2:8-10. You are saved by God's grace because of your faith. This salvation is God's gift. It's not something you possessed. It's not something you did that you can be proud of. Instead, we are God's accomplishment, created in Christ Jesus to do good things. God planned for these good things to be the way that we live our lives. James 2:14-17. My brothers and sisters, what good is it if people say that they have faith, but do nothing to show it? Claiming to have faith can't save anyone, can it? Imagine a brother or sister who is naked and has never had enough food to eat. What if one of you said, go in peace, stay warm, have a nice meal? What good is it if you don't actually give them what their body needs? In the same way, faith is dead when it doesn't result in faithful activity. Matthew 5:43-48. You have heard it said, you must love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who harass you, so that you will be acting as children of your Father who is in heaven. He makes the sun rise on both the evil and the good, and sends rain on both the righteous and the unrighteous. If you only love those who love you, what reward do you have? Even the tax collectors do the same. Oh, don't even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing? Don't even the Gentiles do the same? Therefore, just as your heavenly Father is complete in showing love to everyone, so also you must be complete. Matthew 22:34-40. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had left the Sadducees speechless, they met together. One of them, a legal expert, tested him. Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? He replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You must love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and all the prophets depend on these two commands.
It's been a while since I've done this. Have patience with me. When I first became a pastor at Emmanuel Mennonite Church in Atlanta, Colorado, which is in southeast Colorado, I have to admit, I was a bit nervous. Perhaps a better word might even be terrified. We were leaving our home in northern Indiana, which had been my home for 37 years. It's where I was born and raised, Elkhart, Indiana. And we were going from this place where it rained fairly regularly. It was green. And we were going to this place that was a desert, basically. Atlanta's in a semi-arid area. And it was a change. It was a huge change. I still remember some of the jokes we talked about when it rained. We had 10-inch rain, so raindrop every 10 inches. But then when it did rain, boy, it rained. And I remember gathering in front of the front window watching it rain because it just didn't rain very much in Atlanta. And when it did, boy, it was time to celebrate. So, but I was also nervous and terrified because I was going to be a pastor for the first time in a church. And I had no clue how to do it. I had no idea. How do you lead a church? How do you lead a congregation that was diminishing in numbers, mostly because people were moving away. They were moving back to their homes in the east. I lived in the east to move west. I don't know why anybody want to move west to move east. I don't know about that. I haven't figured that out. But they were diminishing a little bit, but they called me. They wanted me to be their pastor. And there was a core group of people there that I loved. I mean, they were great. They were great. Yes, I was nervous, and yes, I was a bit terrified, but I got to tell you, I was also a bit cocky. I believed that I could go into this place and I could change the church. I could create a new church that would grow, not only in numbers, but spiritually, especially spiritually. Now, I can tell you that we grew in numbers, but I'm not sure about spiritually. I don't know about that, but you have to ask them. But we did grow. I thought we could change the world, that we would change the world. I had mighty big dreams back then. After I agreed to preach today, I began thinking about what I wanted to share with you that would shake the rafters and raise the roof and motivate and challenge, and inspire and change your lives forever and ever. We former pastors still dream big sometimes. And then I thought about the topics and ideas, and then I remembered that I used to have to do this on an average of 42 to 44 times a year. And then I got a headache. And my acid reflux got worse. And I thought about going fishing, which Justin and I did yesterday. Even caught some fish. And you think if it was bad for me to come up with a sermon 42 to 44 times a year, think about Linda, who had to listen to me 42 to 44 times a year, wondering if I was going to say anything stupid. I don't know that I ever did, but there's always a first time, right? Yes. By the way, if you remember one thing I say today, I will be happy. And kudos to Gary and to all the other pastors who preach almost every Sunday. I don't know how you do it. You know, I really think it was a lot easier back in the 1990s than it is today. Such a challenge. There's so much stuff going on. What do you talk about? The other thing that was important is I always had a glass of water with me because my mouth got always dry when I started talking. There are two things you need to know about me. First of all, I'm not a theologian. I never wanted to be, never intended to be. I never want to be. I'm too old to do that now anyway.
Capital Saturday as part of the No Kings movement to protest President Donald Trump
Oh,
and
what? Okay. I think of theologians, and I think of my theology classes in seminary, and you got to tell you, they did bore me to tears. I mean, really, I mean, is that there? And I think of theologians, and I think of, I have this image in mind, you get 20 theologians in a room together, and the only thing they'll agree on is the other 19 are wrong. The other thing you need to know about me, and you need to know about me, is for the last at least 10 years, I do not refer to myself as a Christian. I do not. I cannot. Because I believe that we have watered down the meaning of what it means to be Christian so much that it doesn't mean anything anymore. I was always taught that the word Christian means that you are to be like Christ. The word Christian means to be a little Christ, right? To me, that's what it meant. But I look out today and it just seems like that's not happening. We're not like Christ. I don't know. I refer to myself as a follower of Jesus Christ, a disciple of Jesus Christ, but I do not refer myself as a Christian. I was a chaplain at Denver Health Medical Center. I saw so much stuff going on and so many people that it's just, I don't know. So those are two things you need to know about me. I'm not a theologian, and I do not refer to myself as being Christian. but I believe in God and I believe in the teachings of Jesus. When Linda came home from church, I think maybe it's back at the beginning of May, I asked her if there's anything interesting going on. Those of you know, come here regularly, know that I don't always come every Sunday. Sometimes I go fishing with Justin, um, but that Sunday she came by herself, and she came home and I asked her if anything interesting had gone on, and she said that somebody had brought up the topic of, does this church believe that Jesus Christ died for our sins? Something about the blood and all that stuff. And I began thinking about other times in the church when there were issues that came up. I remember my home church in Elkhart, Indiana, Sunnyside Mennonite Church, where the topics of faith versus works theology was the big thing. We were talking about that about almost every Sunday. Are we saved by grace? Are we saved by faith? Are we saved by works? Ephesians seems to say one thing, James seems to say another, but I think they're both saying the same thing. Here I am today, 72 years old. Now think about all these things that we fight about in the church, we talked about, that are issues. And I got to tell you, I just really don't care anymore. It does not matter to me. I don't care who comes in and who gets out. It's not up to me anyway. I'm not the judge. I'm not even on the jury. I also believe that the broader church is asking all the wrong questions, and we're talking about all the wrong issues. There was once a famous monastery that had fallen on hard times. Formerly, its many buildings were filled with young monks, and its big church resounded in the singing of the chant. It was known far and wide as a place of godly people. Many came to it for spiritual guidance and renewal. But now it was almost deserted. People no longer came to be nourished by prayer. No one came to be strengthened by retreat. A handful of old monks shuffled through the cloisters and praised their God, but they did so with heavy hearts. The abbot of the monastery spent many hours in prayer, asking God to send a renewal to these faithful monks. Out on the edge of a monastery woods, an old rabbi had built a little hut, and he would come there from time to time to fast and to pray. No one ever spoke to him, but whenever he appeared, the word would be passed from monk to monk. The rabbi walks in the woods. And for as long as he was there, the monks would feel sustained by his perfect presence. One day, the abbot decided that he was going to open his heart to him, go visit the rabbi and open his heart to him. So after the morning Eucharist, he set out through the woods. As he approached the hut, the abbot saw the rabbi standing in the doorway, his arms outstretched in welcome. It was as though he knew the abbot would come and been waiting there all along for him. The two embraced like long-lost brothers. Then they stepped back. They just sat there or stood there and smiled at each other with smiles their faces could hardly contain. After a while, the rabbi motioned the abbot to enter. In the middle of the room stood a wooden table with a book with the scriptures open on it. And they sat for a moment there in the presence of the book. Then, to the astonishment of the abbot, the rabbi began to cry. Soon the abbot could no longer contain himself, and he began to cry as well. And for the first time in his life, the abbot cried his heart out in the presence of another man. The two men stood there like long-lost children, filling the hut with their sobs and wetting the wooden table with their tears. After the tears had ceased to flow and all was quiet again, the rabbi lifted his head. You and your brothers are serving God with a heavy heart. You have come to ask a teaching of me. Well, I will give you a teaching, but you must not repeat it to anyone. For if you do on that day, you will surely die. The rabbi looked straight at the abbot, and he said in a quiet, hushed voice, the Messiah is among you. For a while, all was silent. Then the rabbi said, you must go. The abbot left without a word and without looking back. The next morning, the abbot called his monks together in the chapel room. He told them he had received a teaching from the rabbi who walks in the woods. He was forbidden to repeat the teaching, but he was sure that this teaching was from God and would change their situation. And change things it certainly did. Each time the abbot saw one of the monks, he thought, is Brother John the Messiah, or Father Matthew, or Brother Thomas? Or bringing it closer to home is Sister Mary Beth, or Sister Christine, or Brother Ernie, Brother Roger, Sister Pam, Sister Paula, maybe a niece. Or am I the Messiah? And what does this mean? The Messiah is among you. What does this mean? At first, the change was only noticeable in the abbot. The other monks noticed that he began to treat them all with a special reverence. It was as though he had seen something special in each one of them. They each felt special when he talked and worked with them. After a while, the monks began to change. There was a gentle, wholehearted human quality about them that was easy to describe, but hard to describe, but easy to notice. They loved one another. They lived with one another as men who had found something, but they practiced and prayed the scriptures together as men who were always looking for something. Occasional visitors would be inspired by these monks again, deeply moved by the life of these monks. Before long, people were coming from far and wide to be nourished by the prayer life of the monks. Young men were once again asking to become part of this holy community. Now, in those days, the rabbi no longer walked in the woods. In fact, after the abbot's visit, no one had ever seen the rabbi again. Then the abbot grew old and fell ill. Fearful that the teaching that had brought about such spiritual renewal to the monastery would be lost forever, the monks gathered around the bed and they pled with him to reveal the secret of the renewed faith. Knowing this was the day he was to die, the abbot called him near to his bed, and the whisper of a man about to meet God, he said for the first time those extremely powerful words, the gift from the rabbi who walked in the woods. The Messiah is among you. Folks, there's a lot of things I don't understand today. There's a lot of things that go on that just kind of go right over the top of my head. I don't understand what it's like to be romantically or sexually attracted to someone of my own gender. I don't know what it's like to be a male trapped in a female's body. I don't know what it's like to be that because that's not my experience. But I got to tell you, I know it's real. I work with those kids. I know it's real. And just by banning books won't make it go away. So there's a lot of things I don't understand. But I got to tell you, I don't have to understand something to accept you and to love you. As a chaplain and Denver Health and other places, I tried hard to treat people, even as a pastor, I tried hard to treat people with respect and with dignity. I did it not to gain brownie points with God, to get into some heaven someplace. But I did it because it's the right thing to do. I know what it's like to be mistreated. Middle school years were tough for me. I was teased. I was made fun of. I was bullied by people who even call themselves my friends. They were tough years. And I guess I vowed when I got older that I would never do that to anybody else. I'm not perfect. I find it difficult to love those who hurt and abuse others, who spread hate. I got to tell you, when I read about the shootings yesterday in Minnesota, I've seen enough shot up bodies in my lifetime. I don't know what's after this life, but sometimes I got to believe there's a special place in hell for people who take other lives. But it's not up to me. Again, I'm not the judge. And I do believe in grace, God's grace. I do believe in God's love. And I believe that both are so enormous. So I'm not perfect. I'm not a fan of our current president. But I struggle even more with loving those who call themselves Christians and say, I love you, but at the same time say, get out of our churches, you're not welcome here. Get out of our country. I don't really care if you're hungry. I don't really care if you need clothing. I don't care if you need shelter. Get out. To me, that's not Christian at all. That's who I really struggle with, folks. Yeah, there's the man in Washington, D.C. that I'm not very fond of, but I got to tell you, there's bigger problems than him. I mentioned earlier that I'm not a theologian. Theology is the study of God. Why do we need to study God? Never understood that either. Seems rather clear to me. Jesus teaches us that we are to love our enemies. We are to pray for those who persecute us. It makes it even simpler later on in Matthew. Love God with our whole hearts. Love our neighbors as we love ourselves. But Jesus seems to be irrelevant these days. The teachings of Jesus don't seem to mean anything. Love God. Sometimes I wonder what God we're loving. Is it the God of money? There are times when I really felt like this country worships guns, like it's, we worship guns. Is that our God? Is that people's God? Oh, I could preach a sermon about guns, but I won't. I hate guns. Like I said, I've seen shot up bodies, and I'm trying to rid myself of those images, so they're still there. Love others, but only if they look like me and act like me and believe the same things I believe and have orange hair. Love myself. You know what? I think that's the hardest one of all. And I really think that is probably the reason why we have so much trouble with the first two, because we simply do not know how to love ourselves. I spent a lifetime trying to learn. I'm still not sure I got it. I still try to treat people with respect and dignity, and to be a little bit of God's love to people. Because the moment I stop doing that, The moment I stop treating people with respect and dignity and love, I'm no longer teaching and following the teachings of Jesus. Now, I mentioned earlier that I had big dreams when I was a pastor about changing the world. You know what? I still think we can. But it's not all at once. We got to start small. I love that little song on it starts small. I imagine taking a little stone and throwing it into a pond, and then you watch the ripples flow out. And you imagine taking a handful of stones when Chayton was younger. He'd sit by the river sometimes and he'd grab a handful and just throw it in the river. And you just watch the ripples flow out. Imagine a handful of stones and you throw them into the pond and then just ripples flowing everywhere. I think it starts with you and me. You know, it starts with you and me. Sometimes I feel hopeless. Felt a little hopeless last night. Feel like we live in a world and a country who have forgotten the teachings of Jesus. But I have not lost hope. I still have it a little bit. Maybe it's a wild hope. I love that song we sang last Sunday. We're going to sing it again today. But I still hope. I hope that we can change the world, but it's just changing ourselves. I'm going to treat you, Ernie, with respect and dignity. Paula, Beth, Christine, Charlie. We start here and then watch the ripples flow out. So let's not forget the gift of the Rabbi who walks in the woods. The Messiah is among you.